A wife exhausted from supporting her lazy husband, only to be discarded the moment he became a millionaire. But she didn't cry. She stood up and turned that very pain into the strength that changed her life. This is not a story of revenge. This is the most human, dignified twist you'll ever witness.
Before we begin this story, let me know where you are listening from in the comments below.
My name is Maya Brooks. I'm 33 years old. And what I'm about to tell you today will forever change the way you see your own family. Some mornings, you wake up and know something's changed. Others, the change has already happened. You're just the last to notice. It was 5:32 a.m. in Cleveland. Outside the window of our 2-bedroom shoebox, the wind screamed like it had something to say. The radiator in the corner, long dead, offered no heat, only metallic silence. My breath came out in small clouds as I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, trying not to wince when my heel hit the icy floor. The apartment was cold in more ways than one. I padded softly to the kitchen, the wooden floor creaking beneath me like it resented being woken. I moved out of habit, not intention, the kind of motion your body memorizes when your mind has clocked out. Everything was exactly where it always was. The cracked backsplash, the flickering light above the sink, the half bag of cereal I'd been stretching for 3 days. I didn't bother turning on the heater anymore. It never worked. Like everything else in this place. Like us. "You always gotta be so damn loud," came a voice from the bedroom, slurred with sleep, yet sharp enough to cut. I froze mid-step, bowl in hand. "I'm just getting ready for work," I said softly, keeping my voice flat, neutral. "You stomp around like a fucking elephant. Jesus, Maya." Then silence, the kind that stings more than shouting. I poured milk into my cereal. The carton was almost empty. Again, this is my life. A 33-year-old woman eating breakfast in the dark, afraid to wake the man she married. I sat at the small fold-out table beside the window, pulling my hoodie tighter around me. The glass was fogged with condensation, just enough to blur the outside world, just enough to make it feel like somewhere far away. I used to think this apartment had charm. The exposed brick, the creaky floor, the way the morning sun poured through the window and made our coffee steam look like magic. But that was when Ethan still kissed me on the shoulder as I cooked eggs. When he still whispered dreams into my hair before everything turned to dust. Now he barely looked at me, unless it was to blame me for his failures, for his fatigue, for his stalled projects and empty bank account. I was the scapegoat, the maid, the noise in the morning. I finished eating in silence, put my bowl in the sink, and started gathering my things for work. "Hey," Ethan called from the bedroom. "Don't forget oat milk." That was all he had to say. No good morning, no thank you. No acknowledgement of the fact that I was about to work a 12-hour double shift to keep the lights on in this godforsaken apartment. "Okay," I said, like I always did. And then I left. Like I always did. The city was still asleep when I stepped outside. Cold air slapped my face, but I welcomed it. Pain meant feeling, and feeling meant I was still alive. The bus stop was quiet. Just me and an old man with a thermos and a 1,000-yard stare. The bus rumbled up, lights blinking in the dark. I climbed in, found a seat by the window, and let my head rest against the glass. The city blurred. Gray sky, slushy sidewalks, people moving like shadows. I checked my phone. A text from Jenna lit up the screen. "Girl, you're gonna break if you don't rest. When are you gonna stop saving someone who won't even save himself?" I stared at it for a long time, typed, "Maybe after the next failure." Deleted it, typed again. "Soon, I hope." Didn't send it. Just locked the screen. By 7 a.m., I was at the clinic front desk, plastering on a smile like it was armor. My name tag still read, Maya Reception, though my job was part receptionist, part emotional sponge, part chaos manager. Phones rang, kids cried. Old folks argued over co-pays. I smiled through it all, held space for everyone but myself. At noon, Karen dropped a granola bar on my desk without looking. "Lunch," she said. I thanked her like she'd handed me filet mignon. Around 3 p.m., someone's toddler threw up in the waiting area. I cleaned it. At 5, I changed uniforms in the bathroom stall and headed across town to clean the dentist office where Jenna's uncle let me scrub floors for $12 an hour under the table. By 9:15, I could barely feel my feet. I stopped by the store, grabbed oat milk and eggs with my last $22, and caught the late bus home. The apartment was dark when I got back, smelled like burnt pizza rolls and weed. Ethan was exactly where I left him. On the couch, laptop glowing in his lap, headset over his ears. He didn't say hello, just barked, "You get the oat milk?" I set the bag on the counter. "It's in there!" Finally. He didn't even pause his game. I wanted to scream, throw the milk at the wall, tell him I was done. Instead, I pulled off my shoes, made myself a sad sandwich, and started cleaning the dishes he'd left in the sink since yesterday. "Don't clank those so loud," he snapped. I stopped scrubbing. My hands trembled in the soapy water. In that moment, I wasn't a wife. I wasn't even a person. I was a noise, a utility, a function. Later, in bed, he scrolled his phone while I lay stiff beside him. "You ever think maybe you're the reason I haven't made it yet?" he said suddenly. I turned my head to look at him. "What?" he shrugged. "You're always stressing, always working. Your energy's just heavy. Maybe if I had more support, I could have succeeded already." I didn't say a word. I just turned away and stared at the wall. But inside, something cracked. A seam I'd held together too long finally split. That night, I dreamed of silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that follows a scream. The kind that means something just ended. When I woke up the next morning, the air felt heavier than ever. And though I didn't know it yet, that Tuesday would be the last morning I ever felt that small. Something inside me had shifted. I just didn't have the words for it yet. They don't tell you that exhaustion can become a personality, that one day you stop being Maya and start being the tired one. The one who says, "I'm fine," when what you really mean is, "I'm disappearing." That was me. I wasn't just tired. I was worn to the bone, physically, mentally, emotionally, grinding through life like a car running on fumes, hoping the next gas station wasn't just another mirage. Thursday morning, I woke before the alarm. Not out of peace or restfulness, but because my body knew it had things to do and couldn't afford to waste time pretending to rest. I lay there for a moment, watching the ceiling. The same cracked plaster, the same faint water stain that looked vaguely like the state of Texas. I listened to Ethan's soft snoring beside me and felt a pang of something. Jealousy, maybe. Resentment. He could sleep. He didn't carry the weight of keeping our lives from falling apart. I swung my legs off the bed. The floor was freezing. My toes curled instinctively as I tiptoed to the kitchen, careful to avoid the creaky board near the hallway. Still, I wasn't quiet enough. "Maya, seriously?" Ethan groaned from the bedroom. "Why do you sound like you're rearranging the damn furniture?" I didn't answer right away. My hands were shaking as I reached for the coffee tin. Not from fear, from restraint. "I'm getting ready for work," I said, keeping my tone flat. Could have fooled me. "I'm trying to sleep." Sleep. Something he did 12 hours a day. Something I barely remembered the texture of. The clinic was already packed when I arrived at 6:58 a.m., 2 minutes before opening. There was a line of patients out the door, some coughing, some pacing. Others slouched in folding chairs with eyes half closed. Flu season was in full swing, and Brookside Family Clinic felt more like a triage unit than a local practice. I clicked into gear the moment I stepped behind the front desk. Greet, register, verify insurance, direct to triage, over and over. The phones rang nonstop, like sirens in my ears. "Brookside Clinic, Maya speaking. How can I help you?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we need a referral for that specialist." "Yes, I can check your prescription refill status." "No, we don't accept that insurance, but I can refer you." By 10 Heart Palto a.m., I'd already dealt with 2 shouting patients, spilled a cup of coffee down my blouse, and run out of printer paper mid-insurance verification. My feet ached, my stomach growled, my face smiled, because that's what I did. I gave people calm while I unraveled inside. During my lunch break, if you could call 10 minutes hiding in the supply closet a break, I checked my phone. Jenna had texted again. "Jenna, you look like a walking sleep paralysis demon in your IG story. Girl, you need rest. Not caffeine, not motivation, rest." I smiled despite myself. Typed, "Can't afford. Rest. Got a genius husband with big dreams and zero income. Deleted it. Typed again. I'll nap when I'm dead. Didn't send that either. I just put the phone away and stared at the shelves of gauze and tongue depressors. In that moment, I envied the tongue depressors. At least they had a single clear purpose. When my shift ended at 4:45, I didn't go home. Instead, I walked 3 blocks to the 57 bus that took me to the other side of town, where I cleaned dental offices 3 nights a week. Jenna's uncle paid cash. No questions, no judgments. I changed in the back room, sliding into scrubs that smelled like bleach and rubber. There was no glamour in sweeping up tartar dust and emptying bins of used gloves. But there was silence. There was control. There was peace. I could lose myself in the repetitive motions, wipe, mop, spray, scrub, and not think about Ethan or rent or dreams I had locked away in a box years ago. By the time I got back to the apartment, it was 9:20 p.m. The smell hit me first. Microwaved hot dogs, vape juice, and gym socks. Ethan's holy trinity. He was on the couch, gaming headset on, controller in hand, barking orders at digital strangers. The TV glowed. The blinds were still shut from that morning. I walked in quietly, placed my bag down, and headed straight to the kitchen. "You grab food?" he shouted between gunfire sounds. "No," I said. "I worked." "Damn, you could have texted. I'm starving." I opened the fridge. There was half a bag of shredded cheese, 3 eggs, and something green I didn't dare identify. "I'll make something." "Cool, don't take forever," I wanted to scream. Instead, I cracked eggs into a pan and stirred like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. Over dinner, if you could call burnt scrambled eggs and toast dinner, Ethan launched into his latest big idea. "So I'm thinking of starting a coaching business, like mindset stuff, personal development. I'd call it something like Elevate Empire or Alpha U." I chewed my toast slowly. "I thought you were building the drone delivery app." "Yeah, but this is more scalable, less overhead. I just need startup capital, like a couple grand, not even a big deal." "A couple grand." He said it like he was asking for gum. "We don't have that kind of money," he rolled his eyes. "We will if you stop stressing and just trust me for once." God, Maya, it's like you enjoy playing the victim. My fork clattered against the plate. My hands were trembling again, but I stayed quiet, because arguing with Ethan was like screaming into a void. Later that night, I was folding laundry on the couch while Ethan scrolled on his phone. He glanced up. "Sam's wife just got her real estate license. She's flipping condos now, runs their finances, keeps their place spotless. Honestly, she's the whole package." I stared at him. He didn't even look up from his screen. "She sounds busy," I said. "Yeah, but, like, supportive, you know?" Supportive. That word hung in the air like a bad smell. I felt something in me pull tight, like a thread finally snapping. I stood up, left the laundry half folded, and walked to the bathroom, closed the door, sat on the edge of the tub, and for the first time in months, I cried. Not because I was sad, because I was so tired. Tired of being compared. Tired of being invisible. Tired of being the only adult in this relationship. When I looked in the mirror that night, I barely recognized myself. Hair limp, eyes dull. Shoulders slumped like I was carrying the entire city of Cleveland on my back. I whispered, "Who are you?" The mirror said nothing, but I saw the answer in my reflection. I was someone holding on too long, to a man, to a marriage, to a version of myself that no longer existed. That night, I lay in bed beside Ethan, his snores filling the room like static. I stared at the ceiling again, that same Texas-shaped stain above us, and I realized something. I didn't need a vacation. I didn't need a nap. I needed out. I didn't say it aloud. Not yet. Not then. But I knew my life was not going to change if I didn't change it. They say marriage is hard work, but no one tells you what to do when you're the only one clocking in. Sunday morning, I woke up before Ethan. Again. The light slanted through the blinds, throwing dusty lines across the ceiling. I lay there for a minute, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional honk from Lorraine Avenue. His back was to me. He snored softly, peacefully. I hated how peaceful he looked, like the world hadn't been sitting on my chest all week. Like he wasn't the reason I'd cried in the bathroom stall at work 2 days ago, quietly, with my mouth covered by my sleeve so no one would hear. I got up and started the coffee. The smell used to mean comfort, routine. Now it just reminded me of how long the day was going to be. Ethan shuffled into the kitchen around 10, shirtless, scratching his stomach. "You used the last of the good beans?" he asked, peering into the pot. "I thought we were out," I said. "You didn't check hard enough." I didn't respond. What was there to say? He poured a cup anyway, sat down, and started scrolling his phone while I cleaned the countertop he never wiped after his midnight snacks. "Sam and Julia are going to Turks and Caicos," he said suddenly, as if it was a news alert. "That's nice," I murmured, rinsing a mug. "Yeah, she booked the whole thing as a surprise. Paid for flights, hotel, jet skis. Said she wanted him to feel appreciated. Imagine that." I didn't look up. "Sounds like they have money." "They have teamwork," he snapped. "That's what we don't have. You don't think ahead. You don't support the vision." I dropped the sponge into the sink with a soft slap. Water splashed up my forearm. "The vision?" I asked. He stood, pacing like he was preparing for a TED Talk. "Yes, Maya, the plan. The long game? I'm trying to build something, and all you do is nag me about bills and oat milk." I turned to face him. My voice was quiet. "Because someone has to care about those things." He laughed, cold and short. "You know what your problem is? You're comfortable being average. You settle. I'm not built like that." No. He was built to escape consequences. I was built to carry them. That afternoon, I sat on the couch folding laundry while Ethan played Call of Duty. He screamed into his headset, cursing at strangers, as if none of this, the pile of bills, the empty fridge, the unreturned calls from his mom, mattered. A dish crashed in the kitchen. I flinched. Not from fear, from reflex. It had become a habit to tense at sudden noise. "Jesus," he shouted from the couch. "Can you not bang stuff around? I'm trying to concentrate." "You're yelling into a mic," I said quietly. "What was that?" "Nothing." He paused the game and stood up. Walked over to me, his eyes sharp. "You know, you've been really off lately," he said. Cold, distant. I folded a pair of socks. "I've been tired." "No," he sneered. "You've been bitter. You don't smile anymore. You don't touch me. It's like living with a ghost." Something in me cracked at that. Living with a ghost. I was the one walking through walls of indifference. I was the one cleaning up messes, paying bills, cooking meals no one thanked me for. I was the one losing myself a little more every day, while he chased dreams that only lived on Reddit threads and YouTube ads. I stood, the laundry still unfinished on the couch. "Do you even see me?" I asked. "What's that supposed to mean? Do you see who I am anymore? What I do? What I give up?" He rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go. The martyr speech. I'm not asking for a parade, just a partner. You act like I'm some deadbeat. You haven't had a job in 2 years. I'm building something. With what money, Ethan? Mine?" Silence. Then he whispered, low and dangerous. "Maybe I'd be further along if I didn't have an anchor tied to my leg." I blinked. Anchor, not partner, not wife. Anchor. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror after he fell asleep. I'd been brushing my teeth, but I stopped halfway, toothbrush frozen midair. I looked into my own eyes. Really looked. They were bloodshot, tired, faded. But underneath the fatigue, I saw it. Rage. Not loud, dramatic rage. The quiet kind. The kind that simmers for years, waiting. The kind that burns slow and deep until you don't even notice it's there anymore. I rinsed my mouth, wiped my face, and whispered, "This isn't love." In the days that followed, Ethan's bitterness only sharpened. He picked fights over nothing, the way I folded his shirts, the meals I cooked, the fact that I didn't laugh at his Instagram reels anymore. He started comparing me to other women, women who understood their role, women who knew how to make a man feel like a king. I smiled through clenched teeth. I wanted to scream, "You're not a king. You're a tyrant in sweatpants." But I said nothing, because I knew screaming wouldn't change him. One night, I made pasta. He came in late, slammed his backpack on the floor. "You used jar sauce again," I nodded. "It's what we had," he huffed. "God, Maya. Is it that hard to make something from scratch? Sam's wife cooks every night. Real meals. like grown women do. I set the fork down slowly, looked at him. Really looked. You love talking about Sam's wife. Why don't you just go marry her? He smirked. Maybe I would if she wasn't taken. The silence that followed was cold and deep. For once he realized he'd crossed a line, but I didn't cry, didn't shout. I just stood up, walked to the bedroom, and closed the door. Not to sleep, but to reclaim the silence. There's a moment when exhaustion becomes clarity, when the fog lifts just enough for you to see that what you're in isn't just hard. It's wrong. That moment came 2 nights later. I came home from the dental office at nearly 10. My feet ached. My hands were raw from bleach. Ethan was on the couch, playing a poker live stream. A mountain of dishes sat in the sink. He hadn't even thought to order dinner. There was a stain on the rug from whatever he spilled at lunch. He looked up at me like I was late, like I'd missed a deadline. "What took you so long?" he said. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, cleaned the dishes, took out the trash, swept the floor, and when I was done, I stood in the doorway and looked at him. "I don't love you anymore," I said. He looked up, confused. "What?" "I don't love you, I don't hate you either, I just don't feel anything. And that scares me." He laughed nervously. "Okay, weird mood. Want to talk about it after this hand?" I didn't reply, because there was nothing left to say. That night, I lay in bed wide awake. The city buzzed outside. Ethan snored beside me, and I knew the marriage had cracked. And those cracks were no longer invisible. They were gaping. They were permanent. They were mine to walk away from. Soon. I was halfway through washing the bathroom mirror when Ethan's phone rang. Not the usual ringtone. This one was different, sharp, clean, official. The kind of tone you don't assign to friends or spam calls. The kind of tone meant for news that shifts the earth beneath your feet. He was still in bed, tangled in sheets like a teenager skipping class. "Ethan," I called. "Your phone's ringing." It sounds important." He groaned and reached for it blindly, nearly knocking it off the nightstand. "Yeah," he answered, voice raspy. I paused, pretending to wipe the mirror, but I watched him through the reflection. His back straightened. "Yeah, this is Ethan Price. 11 o'clock tomorrow? Sure, I'll be there. Wait, what address again?" He scribbled something on the back of a grocery receipt. His hand was shaking. "Okay, thank you. Yes, I appreciate the call." He hung up, staring at the paper for a long moment like it might dissolve if he blinked. Then he turned to me, eyes wide, but not with fear, with fire. "My Uncle Marshall just died." I turned around slowly, cloth still in hand. "Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry." He didn't answer, didn't frown, didn't sigh. He smiled. Marshall Price wasn't a close relative, not in the emotional sense anyway. He'd been a quiet man with a deep voice and a stare that could pin you in place. Retired Navy, lived in upstate New York in a massive brick home with ivy-covered windows. Ethan hadn't seen him in nearly 5 years, and even then, it was a short Christmas visit we left early. Still, Marshall had money, old money, investments, land, assets no one really talked about because Marshall didn't like people asking. Ethan sat at the kitchen table that night, staring into his untouched bowl of cereal, legs bouncing with nervous energy. "They said I need to be at the attorney's office tomorrow morning. He must have left something. I mean, why else call me?" I sat across from him. "You were his only nephew, right?" "Only living one, yeah?" His voice was far away. "He didn't have kids. No wife. Just me." He looked up and I saw it then. Greed, clear and hungry in his eyes. The same look he got when he talked about NFTs or flipping metaverse land. "I mean, who else would he leave it to?" Ethan said, already drifting. "It's probably stocks, property. That house was huge. Maybe even cars, like a classic Mustang or something." He had that old school taste. His leg bounced faster. "And if there's money, like real money, we could get out of this dump. I could launch anything with enough capital. God, I could finally build something that sticks." I nodded, stirring my tea, feeling my stomach twist. He hadn't once said he missed the man. Not once. That night, he stayed up past 2 a.m., pacing the living room, muttering to himself. "Ethan," I whispered from the hallway, "you need sleep." He turned, startled. How can I sleep? Everything could change tomorrow. I nodded slowly. Do you want me to come with you? He scoffed. To the reading of the will? I mean, you're his family, but we're married. Maybe I should. He cut me off. It's a private family matter. You're not really part of that. The sentence hit harder than I expected. Not part of the family. After 5 years of marriage, after sacrificing my body, my sleep, my soul so he could chase one failed project after another, I didn't respond. Just went to bed alone. The next morning, Ethan wore the only button-up shirt he owned. It had a missing cufflink and a small stain near the collar, but he didn't seem to care. He looked in the mirror, fixing his hair, rehearsing facial expressions like he was prepping for an audition. Do I look appropriately solemn? He asked. I wanted to say, you look like a man waiting for a check. But instead, I said, you look fine. He grabbed the keys. No goodbye, no wish me luck. Just the door clicking shut. He didn't come home until nearly 7 p.m. I was sitting on the couch, folding laundry in silence, the TV playing reruns I wasn't watching. When he walked in, he was glowing, like sunlight had crawled under his skin and lit him from within. Well, I asked, trying to sound neutral. He leaned against the door, grinning like he'd won the lottery. He left everything to me. My stomach sank. Everything? Ethan nodded. The house, the vacation property in Vermont, 2 cars, stock in some old tech company. He said it's worth a lot now. And cash. About $1.8 million in total. I set the towel down on my lap. That's a lot. I know, he said, laughing. I mean, I knew he liked me, but this changes everything. He started pacing again, hands flying as he spoke. I've already got ideas. I can move fast, start fresh, maybe even hire a small team. Get into something global, maybe real estate or e-learning. I blinked. What do you mean by start fresh? He froze, then gave me a look I didn't like. Nothing. I mean, just expand. Live better. Move out of here. I've outgrown this place. We both have, right? He kept talking, but I couldn't hear. Because in that moment, something shifted. His words had changed. It wasn't we. It was I. Not us. Him. The next day, Mrs. Caldwell came by. She was technically Ethan's second cousin, or maybe great-aunt, depending on who you asked. A tiny woman with cloud-white hair, eyes like polished stone, and the quiet grace of someone who knew more than she said. She brought soup in an old mason jar. I heard about Marshall, she said softly, standing in the doorway. Thought you both might need something warm. Thank you, I said. That's kind. She nodded, didn't smile. Her gaze lingered on me for a long time, long enough to, make my throat tighten. There was something knowing in her eyes, something ancient. She reached out and squeezed my hand gently before leaving. No words, just a look, a warning, or maybe a promise. That night, Ethan stayed up again, pacing like a caged animal, muttering numbers, app names, market trends. He didn't ask how my day was, didn't touch me, didn't even acknowledge I was in the room. And somewhere deep inside, I understood. The inheritance hadn't changed Ethan. It had revealed him. There's a specific silence that fills a room before a will is read. Not grief, not reverence, expectation. Like everyone's holding their breath, waiting to hear if their life just changed. I wasn't in that room, but I felt it in my bones. Ethan had left early that morning, dressed in the same wrinkled button-up from the day before. This time, he'd added a tie, poorly knotted, and sprayed himself with cologne that hadn't seen daylight in years. He checked himself twice in the mirror, smoothing his hair, practicing his solemn expression. How do I look? He asked, adjusting the tie one last time. Like someone pretending to mourn, he smirked. Don't be bitter, Maya. This is a big day. Do you want me to come with you? He looked genuinely surprised. Why would you? We're married. He laughed, not kindly. This isn't your side of the family. You'd just be sitting there awkwardly. It's private. Private. That word hit like a slap. He didn't say goodbye, just grabbed his keys and left, whistling as he went. I spent the morning cleaning the apartment even though I didn't have to. Scrubbing baseboards, vacuuming behind the couch, organizing kitchen drawers. It was what I did when I didn't know what else to do. Make order out of chaos, even if it was the kind no Lysol could fix. I couldn't stop wondering what was happening in that office. I imagined Ethan sitting in a stiff leather chair, listening to some gray-haired lawyer with thick glasses and a voice like gravel. A room with wood-paneled walls and an overwatered fern in the corner. Maybe Mrs. Caldwell was there too. Maybe someone else I'd never met, but the part I imagined the most, again and again, was the moment Ethan's name was read aloud. That would be it. The switch. The moment everything tilted. He came home just before 7 p.m. I heard his footsteps in the hallway before the key even hit the lock. They were light, almost bouncing. He stepped inside, and I barely recognized him. His eyes were wild, glowing, his face flushed, like a man who had tasted something expensive and addictive. "Well?" I asked, standing in the kitchen doorway. He didn't answer right away, just grinned, dropped the keys into the bowl like he was throwing dice, and said, "He left it all to me." I didn't move. "All?" I repeated. Ethan nodded, chest puffed. "Everything. The house in New York. The cottage in Vermont. A classic car, restored Mustang, exactly like I guessed. A portfolio of stocks. Some trust accounts. It's all mine. Ballpark. Around 1.8 million, give or take." I pressed my palm against the door frame to steady myself. "And the lawyer just gave it all to you?" "There's a trust process, but yes, I'm the sole heir." I couldn't explain the feeling that rose in me. It wasn't jealousy, it was foreboding. "How did Mrs. Caldwell react?" He shrugged. "She already knew. I think he told her before he passed." Honestly, she looked more annoyed than surprised. I stared at him. "Did he say anything about us?" Ethan blinked. "What do you mean?" "In the will, anything about me?" He laughed, not cruelly, dismissively. "No, Maya, it's not about you. It's his money, his legacy. He chose me." That night, I noticed the shift. Not subtle, not gradual. Ethan walked differently, spoke differently, held his phone tighter, texted constantly. Every third sentence started with, "I'm thinking," or "I might," or "I should probably." He didn't mention us, didn't say we. I watched him from the couch as he paced the living room on the phone with a realtor. "Yes, I want something modern. Big windows. No, bigger than that. Something with presence." Then later, another call. This one to someone named Marcus. "I'm telling you, man, this is my moment. I've got capital now. No more side hustles. Time to build a brand." By midnight, he was sketching out logos on a napkin. I sat in the kitchen in the dark, a cup of tea going cold in my hands. He didn't look at me once. 3 days later, I found a suitcase by the door. It was mine. I paused, staring at it, then turned slowly toward him. "What's this?" Ethan looked up from his laptop, where he was watching a video titled 10 Steps to Billionaire Mindset. He didn't flinch. "I think we should separate." My mouth went dry. "Excuse me." "This marriage," he said, waving vaguely at the room. "It's been holding me back." "Holding you?" "I can't grow like this. The energy's all wrong. We're not aligned anymore." I stepped closer. "You got rich, and now I'm misaligned. Don't twist it. I've changed, evolved, and I need a partner who matches my ambition." My voice cracked. "I supported every ambition you ever had." "Exactly," he said, like it proved his point. "But you never challenged me, never elevated me." I stared at him. "You mean I never worshipped you?" He stood, picked up a manila envelope, and handed it to me. "Already signed the divorce papers. No lawyers. Clean break. You'll get a small settlement, enough to get back on your feet." I didn't touch the envelope. He shrugged. "You should be grateful. Most men wouldn't even offer that." Then, almost kindly, he added, "You'll be okay, Maya. You're tough." I don't remember grabbing my coat, or my shoes, or my phone. I remember stepping outside and feeling the cold hit me like a second betrayal. The streetlights buzzed. The wind whipped my hair into my mouth. I walked. Nowhere, really. I just walked until my legs hurt more than my heart. That night, I slept on Jenna's couch. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't say anything. She just handed me a blanket and sat beside me while I cried into it. The next morning, the world looked different. Not brighter, just clearer. Like the illusion had finally burned off. The man I married no longer existed. Maybe he never had. Maybe I'd just been in love with his potential. And now he'd outgrown me. Or maybe I'd finally stopped shrinking to fit his story. The morning he ended our marriage started like any other, quiet, gray, and forgettable. It was Sunday. The kind of Sunday Cleveland knows too well, cold but not freezing, damp without rain, a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to be cloudy or just indifferent. I returned to the apartment around 9 a.m. Jenna had gently suggested I stay longer, but I needed clean clothes. I needed closure. I needed to see, for myself, what my life looked like now that I was no longer a part of his. I used my key, expecting the usual mess. A pile of laundry, pizza boxes, the lingering scent of vape juice, and disappointment. But the place was clean. Unnervingly clean. The coffee table was wiped down. The floor was swept. A candle, something expensive and woodsy I didn't recognize, burned quietly on the windowsill. And by the door, side by side like loyal dogs, were 2 suitcases. Mine. Perfectly zipped, stacked. My backpack balanced on top. My throat tightened. Before I could call out his name, Ethan stepped into the living room from the hallway. Fully dressed, button-down shirt, dark jeans, shoes I hadn't seen in months, hair slicked back, watch on his wrist. He looked like a stranger, a polished stranger. "Maya," he said, as if we were acquaintances meeting for coffee. "I see you packed my things," I said, voice low. He didn't flinch. "Yes, I thought it'd save time." I blinked. "Time for what?" He motioned toward the kitchen, where 2 mugs sat untouched. "I made coffee. Let's talk." We sat at the table across from each other. The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. He sipped, calm as ever. I didn't touch mine. "I've thought a lot about this," he began. "About us, where we are, what we've become." I waited. "And I've realized..." He exhaled slowly, like someone announcing layoffs. "We're done." Just like that. No preamble, no apology. Not even an argument. "I'm sorry?" I asked, blinking slowly. "I've outgrown this," he said. "This version of life, of us. And I think deep down, you felt it too." I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. But that didn't make it any less gutting. "I'm not the same man I was 5 years ago," he continued. "And you're not the same woman. You've changed." "You mean I got tired," I said. "Tired of carrying everything while you chased ideas that never landed." He waved his hand. "It's not about blame, isn't it?" He leaned back in his chair. "I'm not trying to be the bad guy here. I've made mistakes. But I'm finally in a place where I can grow, where I can become the man I'm meant to be. And I can't do that with you dragging behind me. Dragging. Not walking beside. Not helping. Not supporting. Dragging." I stared at him, my chest tightening. "You got a taste of money and decided I was baggage." I didn't say that. "You didn't have... 2. He slid an envelope across the table. "These are the divorce papers. I've already signed. It's clean. No lawyers, no drama." "Wow," I said softly. "You really did plan this out." "I booked you a rideshare," he added. "To Jenna's, I assume. Or wherever you want to go. No pressure." "No pressure," I repeated, my voice hollow. "After 5 years, 2 jobs, and every ounce of patience I had left, you send me off like a dry cleaning order." "I thought you'd appreciate the efficiency," he said. I stood up, slowly, carefully, because I could feel it rising in me, the fury, the humiliation, the heartbreak. But I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing it boil over. Instead, I looked him in the eye and said, "You're a coward." That got a twitch. "You could have had a partner for life," I added. "But you wanted a cheerleader, a maid, a mirror that only reflected what you liked." He stayed quiet. "You didn't outgrow me, Ethan," I said. "You outgrew accountability." I turned, walked to the counter, picked up the manila envelope, scanned it. It was all there, cold, clinical, efficient, just like him. I moved to the suitcases, grabbed the handle, stood it upright. "Behind me," he said. "You'll land on your feet. You're adaptable." "I had to be," I said. "You gave me no choice." He walked to the window, already checking his phone. "Who knows," he said casually. "Maybe someday we'll look back on this and laugh." I didn't even turn around. "Maybe you will," I said. "I won't." The hallway smelled like someone else's cooking. My suitcase wheels echoed off the tile. The rideshare driver was already waiting outside, engine humming. I didn't cry. Not there, not in front of him, not in the building where I once believed we were building something real. I waited until I was in the back seat, watching the apartment grow smaller in the rearview mirror. Only then did I let my hand cover my mouth as a quiet sob escaped. Not because I missed him, because I had stayed so long believing love was supposed to hurt. At Jenna's, she opened the door before I could knock. She didn't say anything, just pulled me in, wrapped her arms around me, and held on. "You're not weak," she whispered. "You're brave. You left." I didn't say he left me first, because maybe, just maybe, I had started leaving a long time ago. Piece by piece, night by night. Every time I cried in secret. Every time I said it's fine and meant the opposite. Every time I held his dreams in my arms and let mine shrivel to make room. That night, I lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling fan. I remembered when we first moved into that apartment. Ethan had carried me over the threshold, like in a movie. He'd said, "This is the start of our empire." I smiled at the memory. Not because it was sweet, but because it was over, and because I had finally stopped believing his promises were prophecies. The next morning, I woke to sunlight. Real sunlight. Not filtered through dirty blinds. Not muffled by sorrow. I made coffee in Jenna's kitchen, barefoot, wearing an old sweatshirt and no fear, and I thought, this is how rebuilding starts. Not with a bang, but with breath. With space. With the soft and sacred act of choosing yourself. It had been 4 days since Ethan kicked me out of the life I helped him build. 4 days since I signed the divorce papers with shaking hands and walked out of that apartment for the last time, leaving behind not just a man, but a version of myself I no longer recognized. Jenna's apartment became a temporary cocoon. Quiet mornings, gentle silences, warm cups of coffee that didn't taste like obligation. I was starting to breathe again. Until the call came. It was a Thursday. I had just stepped out of the shower, wrapped in one of Jenna's oversized towels, hair dripping, when my phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. I was too tired for another spam call, but something in my chest tightened. I answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice, smooth, clipped, professional. "Ms. Brooks, this is Andrea Linfield. I'm an associate at the law offices of Harlow, Kinney, and Linfield. We represent the estate of the late Mr. Marshall Price. Do you have a moment to speak?" My stomach dropped. Yes, I suppose so. "I'm calling because your name is listed as a party of interest in the execution of Mr. Price's will. We'd like you to come into the office as soon as possible for a formal reading." I blinked, gripping the sink. There must be some mistake. I'm not family. A pause. "You were married to Ethan Price at the time of Mr. Marshall Price's passing, correct?" Yes, but we're divorced now." Another pause, measured, intentional. "That is precisely why we need to speak with you." Jenna drove me to the firm's office the next morning, insisting I not go alone. The building was all glass and marble and silence. The kind of silence that made your footsteps sound like confessions. The receptionist had perfect hair and perfect teeth. She spoke in the tone of someone who never had to raise their voice. We were led to a small conference room on the 12th floor. Inside sat Ethan and Mrs. Caldwell, and the lawyer, Ms. Linfield, sitting at the head of a long cherrywood table, her glasses low on her nose and a leather folder in front of her like a loaded weapon. Ethan's face when I walked in was priceless. He stood up abruptly. "What is she doing here?" Ms. Linfield raised a hand. "Please, Mr. Price, let's proceed civilly." "I thought this was done," he snapped. "We're divorced." "Yes," she said calmly, "and that's precisely the issue." Mrs. Caldwell looked at me then, her eyes soft, steady. She gave a faint nod, almost like she'd been expecting this moment. I sat across from Ethan. My heart thudded against my ribs, but my face was stone. Ms. Linfield opened the folder and began reading. Per the last will and testament of Mr. Marshall D. Price, executed and notarized on March 14th of this year, the following terms are stated regarding the inheritance in question. She looked up briefly. A total estimated value of $2.4 million in combined assets, liquid and property, is to be transferred under the following condition. She paused. I could hear Ethan's breath quicken. that the entirety of said inheritance shall be granted solely to Mr. Ethan Price, under the explicit requirement that he remains legally married to Maya Brooks for a minimum duration of 1 year following Mr. Marshall Price's passing. The room went dead silent. I stared straight ahead, not moving. Ethan made a sound, part gasp, part choke. What? He croaked. No one told me about that. Ms. Linfield adjusted her glasses. It was a sealed stipulation. Mr. Marshall Price left clear instructions that this clause not be disclosed until the parties were assembled. She turned to me. In the event that Mr. Price and Ms. Brooks are no longer married at the time of review, the inheritance is to be redirected. To who? Ethan asked, his voice rising. She didn't blink. To Ms. Brooks. Ethan stood up so fast his chair skidded backward. No. This is insane. We're not married. She signed the papers. Correct, said Ms. Linfield, which renders you ineligible under the condition. He turned to me, eyes wide, desperate. You knew about this? I just found out, I said quietly. He looked to Mrs. Caldwell. Did you know? She tilted her head. Marshall knew what he was doing. Are you kidding me? He spat. You all conspired to— Nobody conspired, Ms. Linfield cut in sharply. Your uncle placed value on loyalty, consistency, and character. His final letter, which I will now read into record, may offer some clarity. She pulled out a separate envelope and unfolded a handwritten note. To my dear Maya, she read aloud, and the man who was once my nephew. I have watched from a distance, observed in silence, and taken note of what people do when they think no one is watching. Maya, you gave more than you ever received. Ethan, you took more than you ever earned. I know the truth of your marriage. I know what she sacrificed to keep your world from crumbling. That is why this inheritance was never meant as a reward for ambition, but as a recognition of dignity. I leave this fortune in the care of the one who understands its value. Marshall D. Price. Ethan slumped into the chair. He looked at me, pale and furious. This isn't happening. It already did, I said softly. He leaned forward, desperate. Maya, we could fix this. We could get remarried, just for a while. 6 months. I'll give you most of it. We'll split it. Hell, you can take the house. I can't lose everything. I stared at him. The same man who told me I was dead weight. The same man who had zipped my suitcases and called it closure. And now, here he was, begging. I looked to Miss Linfield. Is the clause negotiable? No, she said. It's binding, irreversible. The marriage must have remained valid continuously through the anniversary of his death. That window has now closed. Ethan's face collapsed. No, he whispered. This can't be real. I stood, walked to the window. Cleveland stretched out beneath us, gray, sprawling, alive. And then I said calmly, clearly, I forgive myself for staying, for bending, for trying to love someone who only loved what I could do for him. I turned back to him. But I will not save you. Ms. Linfield handed me a pen. I signed the documents transferring the estate. My hands didn't shake. Ethan buried his face in his hands. Mrs. Caldwell walked me out, her hand gently on my arm. Marshall saw you long before you saw yourself, she whispered. I nodded. My chest ached, but not from pain, from pride. Outside, the sky had cleared, and I, Maya Brooks, former ghost of a woman, stepped into the sunlight, and this time, it was mine. Desperation has a scent. It's not always sweat or alcohol or the sour stench of failure. Sometimes it smells like roses bought in a rush at a gas station. Sometimes it sounds like your name said through gritted teeth and fake apologies. Sometimes it arrives wearing the same shirt from the week before, wrinkled and damp with regret. Ethan showed up at Jenna's doorstep on a Tuesday, 10 days after the will reading, 10 days after he lost everything. I didn't hear the knock at first. I was in the kitchen listening to a podcast about grief and baking muffins from a box mix I hadn't touched in months. Jenna opened the door and called out, Maya, you're going to want to see this. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and stepped into the living room. And there he was, Ethan Price, my ex-husband, the man who told me I was an anchor, the man who zipped my bags and handed me freedom like it was trash to be taken out. Now, standing in front of me, eyes sunken, holding a bouquet of wilted flowers, He looked like a man who had walked straight through his own ego and emerged blistered. "Maya," he said. His voice was softer than I remembered. Jenna stayed close, arms crossed, expression unamused. "You have 2 minutes," I said. He licked his lips. I just wanted to see you, talk, explain." "You already did," I replied. "You explained everything when you signed those papers and smiled." He stepped forward, one hand out. "I made a mistake." I tilted my head. "No, you made a choice. That's different." His face cracked, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the boy I met 10 years ago. The one who dreamt big, talked fast, made pancakes at 2 a.m. The one who promised he'd build us an empire. But that boy had died long ago. "I thought money would fix everything," he admitted. "I thought it would erase all the times I failed." "It didn't," I said. "No, it made it worse. It made me selfish, ugly." He took another step. "I want to fix things. We can undo the divorce. The clause is specific. It only said we had to remain married. If we remarry, we could appeal. It's worth a shot. I'll give you most of it." 60-40. No, 70-30. Hell, I'll walk away with 10%. Just give me a second chance. I almost laughed. But there was no joy in it, just disbelief. "You're not asking for a second chance," I said. "You're asking me to re-enter the prison just so you can dig through the floor and escape." He blinked. "What? You still don't see me, Ethan. You only see what I can give you." He opened his mouth, closed it. Then, in a rush, I have nothing left. There it was, the truth, raw, pathetic, human. Jenna's voice cut in from behind me. "You need to leave now," he turned to her. "Please, just 5 more minutes." "She gave you 2. You've had 6. "I'll call," he said to me. "I'll message." I nodded. "You can. I just won't answer." He froze. "Maya, I'm not angry anymore," I said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you. But I'm also not here to save you." His shoulders slumped. The flowers slipped from his hand onto the floor. I didn't pick them up. He left. And the silence he left behind felt like spring after a long, brutal winter. But the calls didn't stop. Texts, emails, even a handwritten letter, left folded beneath Jenna's doormat like a secret. Each message more desperate than the last. "We were good once. Don't throw it away. I need you. I'm scared." I read them all, then deleted them. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived at Jenna's apartment. Inside, a legal notice from the law firm. Ethan had filed an appeal. Claimed undue emotional distress, misunderstanding of the clause. Claimed that the inheritance should at least be split. Attached, a formal affidavit for me to sign stating the current status of our marriage and my intention not to reinstate it. Jenna read over my shoulder. "He's flailing," she said. "This is his last gasp." I nodded, but I didn't feel victorious, just tired. I signed the affidavit in silence that night, sat at Jenna's tiny desk, with her cat snoring beside me, the TV on mute in the background. I signed my name slowly, deliberately, like I was signing a birth certificate for the version of me finally being born. Then I folded it into the prepaid envelope, sealed it, and whispered, "Goodbye." The next morning, I delivered it myself. I took the train across town and walked the final 6 blocks to the law office. The sky was overcast, but the wind was warm. When I stepped into the marble lobby, the receptionist recognized me. "Ms. Brooks," she said, "we've been expecting you." She didn't say it like a threat. She said it like a closing ceremony. Ms. Linfield met me in her office. Her blazer was crisp, her eyes kind. I handed her the envelope. "No hesitation," she asked. I smiled. "Not anymore," she nodded. "I'll notify the court." She paused. "You know, in 20 years of handling estates, this is the first time the right person ended up with the money. That caught me off guard." "The right person," I echoed. She leaned forward, folding her hands. "Marshall watched you, quietly. He saw something that most people miss. He didn't give you that money out of pity. He gave it to you because you understood the value of what can't be bought." I felt my eyes sting, but I held it in. "Thank you," I whispered. Outside, I stood on the steps of the building for a long time, breathing, existing. I didn't feel rich. I felt right, whole, seen. And then I saw him, across the street, Ethan, again. This time, he didn't call out, didn't wave. He just stood there, disheveled, deflated, watching. He looked at me like I was some distant planet he could no longer reach. And I looked at him like he was a city I had escaped from. Not with bitterness, not even sadness, just peace. He turned and walked away. And I didn't follow. That night, I wrote a letter, not to Ethan, not to Marshall, to myself. Maya, you survived. You let go. And still, you are here. That is your power. That is your victory. I used to think healing would feel like a grand return, like fireworks, like clarity, like the exact opposite of pain. But now I know it feels more like waking up in a room you forgot you owned. It feels like breathing and not noticing your chest is tight. It feels like silence and realizing it no longer scares you. It feels like folding a blanket in the morning and saying to yourself, this space is mine. It took weeks to feel that way, not days, not hours. At first, it felt like limbo. The money sat untouched in a secure account. My name was on it, mine, just mine. But I couldn't bring myself to spend any of it. Not yet. I kept wearing the same sneakers, still brewed cheap coffee, still flinched whenever someone raised their voice on TV. Jenna said, "You know you don't have to live like it's still survival mode, right?" I nodded. But the truth was, survival mode had been home for so long, I wasn't sure how to live without it. My therapist, Amanda, told me something that stuck. You're not lazy for resting. You're not unproductive for healing. You're just becoming. Becoming. I wrote that word on a sticky note and put it on the bathroom mirror. For weeks, I read it every morning like scripture. Eventually, I started making decisions. Small ones. I found a little apartment. Nothing dramatic. A one-bedroom above a flower shop with creaky floors and a view of the street below. I signed the lease with my full name. No cosigner, no safety net. That first night, I laid on the hardwood floor, watching the ceiling fan turn in slow circles. The place smelled like lavender and fresh paint. I cried, not because I was sad, but because the space finally belonged to me. All of it. The silence, the choices, the future. I started cooking again. Real food, meals with spices and sauces and music playing in the background. I bought a Dutch oven and burnt orange because I liked the color. I baked bread. Failed. Tried again. I started wearing lipstick for no reason. Started reading books I had abandoned halfway through when life was too loud. I bought a journal, wrote one sentence a day at first, then full pages, then poems. Not for anyone else, just to hear myself think. About a month in, I pulled out a box I had shoved in the back of Jenna's closet. An old sketch pad, tubes of dry acrylic paint, a few brushes with stiff bristles. It was like opening a time capsule from a life that had been paused. I placed the supplies on my new kitchen table and stared at them for a while. Then I dipped the brush in water and began. The first lines were shaky. My hands remembered before my heart did. Colors bloomed, shapes formed. It wasn't good, but it was mine. That night, I hung the canvas on the wall beside the window. It wasn't a masterpiece, but it was proof. I was still here, and that was enough. I made a list one night in my journal, things I used to want before I got too tired to want. Anything. Visit Italy. Take a solo trip, eat at a restaurant alone without checking my phone. Laugh until I cry. Host a dinner party, get a cat. Learn how to say no. Learn how to say yes to the right things. One by one, I started crossing them off. I booked a flight to Florence in the spring. Didn't overplan it, didn't overthink it. Just packed a bag, boarded a plane, and let the fear be part of the process. Italy was warmer than I expected. Everything smelled like citrus and stone. I rented a little flat near the river and spent most days walking aimlessly, sketchbook in hand, collecting textures. Sunlight bouncing off terracotta roofs. Old women arguing over tomatoes. Laundry lines swaying like prayer flags. I stood in front of Botticelli's The Birth of Venus and let myself cry. Not for the past, but for the future I never thought I'd reach. One evening, I stood on the Ponte Vecchio at sunset. The sky was gold. The Arno shimmered like it was holding a secret. I whispered aloud, "I'm proud of you." It was the first time I had ever said that to myself, and I meant it. When I returned home, I didn't want to keep it all to myself. The healing, the softness, the space. So I started small. A weekly meetup at the library, free coffee, open chairs, no judgment. Just women who had been through too much, trying to breathe again. We laughed, we cried, we shared stories. We named it the second light because that's what we were chasing, not the first light that burned us, but the second one we chose for ourselves. From that circle, something began to grow. Rosa was the first to call me at 2 a.m. "I left him," she whispered. "I'm sitting in the car. I have nowhere to go." I told her where to go, who to call. Then I stayed on the phone until I heard her breathing slow. Now, she runs our intake group. Fatima brought her daughter to one session, scared and silent. 6 months later, they danced together at our fundraising gala. Now, we have a small team. We raise money for housing deposits, court filing fees, grocery cards. We send Uber rides in the middle of the night. We don't fix lives, we just hold the flashlight. Sometimes that's all someone needs. People ask if I still think about Ethan. The truth? Not really. He's a name, a past tense, a lesson, but not a weight. He tried to contact me again. A message sent through a mutual friend. Apologetic, desperate, familiar. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because the version of me who needed closure was long gone. One morning, I stood in my apartment, coffee in hand, looking out the window at the early sun cutting through fog. Oscar, my cat, yes, I finally got him, was curled beside me, purring like a tiny engine. My phone buzzed. A message from Rosa. "Just wanted to say I signed my lease today. My name, my space. Thank you." I smiled. Because this was the full circle moment I didn't know I needed. Helping someone else write the ending I once wished for, and knowing it didn't end with me. Healing is not linear. It is messy, layered, soft, and sharp. But it is possible. It is beautiful. And most of all, it is yours. They say you never really escape your past. You just outgrow it. But sometimes, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the past walks into your favorite coffee shop, wearing a jacket 2 seasons old and shoes with worn soles, and it looks you dead in the eye like it still owed something. That's how it happened. 6 months after the affidavit. 6 months since I last heard his name out loud. 6 months of peace. And then, Ethan. I was sitting at a corner table, reading Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed, sipping a latte with oat milk and cinnamon on top, because I could finally afford tiny indulgences without guilt. The sun filtered through the window behind me. My phone was face down. My heart was steady. I had just written 3 thank you cards that morning and dropped them in the mail. Life was quiet, simple, mine. And then, a shadow across my page. I looked up, and there he was, Ethan Price, my ex-husband, the man who once held my dreams like he was deciding which ones were worth keeping. The man who had once zipped my suitcase and left me without a backward glance. But now? He looked different. Not older, just smaller. Like a coat that had shrunk in the wash. His eyes were hollowed by something deeper than regret. Maybe time, maybe truth. He gave me a nod, like we were 2 strangers who recognized each other from a life neither of us wanted to return to. He didn't ask if he could sit. He didn't need to, because I didn't invite him. I gave him a single look, not cold, not angry, just done. And then I turned the page of my book. He stood there for a second longer, waiting for something, forgiveness, attention, one last thread of relevance. But I didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't break. And finally, he walked away. That night, I told Jenna what happened. She laughed, but there was pride in her voice. "You didn't even say anything?" "Didn't need to," I said. "You really are free." And for the first time, I believed it. Sunday dinner at Mrs. Caldwell's had become a tradition. We didn't talk much about Ethan, but we talked about books, about jasmine tea, about how to keep potted herbs alive. And sometimes, we talked about Uncle Marshall. There was a picture of him on her mantel, smiling, one eyebrow cocked in permanent mischief. "He saw something in you," Mrs. Caldwell said that night as we finished dessert. "Not because you were suffering, but because you carried dignity even when others gave you nothing in return. I felt my throat tighten. She reached across the table and took my hand. "You didn't lose family, Maya," she said softly. "You just found a better one." I framed a photo of Marshall and Mrs. Caldwell and placed it on the shelf above my desk, next to my first painting, now faded but still mine. Every morning, I lit a small candle under it, just for a moment, just to say thank you. The Second Light Foundation grew faster than I expected. We had 5 full-time volunteers now. Our website went live. We started getting emails from women across the state, some of them afraid, some of them ready, all of them searching for that same quiet freedom I had once craved like oxygen. We didn't promise rescue, we promised resource. Not heroes, just light. One of our newest members, a young woman named Talia, came in one day with bruises that weren't physical. She wore shame like a winter coat, zipped tight. And yet, when she spoke, her voice didn't shake. "I want out," she said. "I don't want to be saved. I want to be seen." I sat beside her, took her hand. "You already are." That's the thing I'd learned. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is to sit next to someone and let them name their pain. And to believe them. One day, I was walking through the park, Oscar trotting beside me on his little leash. Yes, he'd become that kind of cat. When I saw a woman sitting alone on a bench crying, I didn't know her story. But I sat beside her, quiet, present. She didn't speak. Neither did I. And after a few minutes, she stood, wiped her face, whispered, "Thank you," and walked away. That's all, and it was everything. I used to think revenge would feel like watching someone fall. But now I know, revenge is building a life so whole, so soft, so undeniably yours, that the person who broke you couldn't survive a day inside it. Freedom is not always loud. It's not always parades or champagne or papers signed with a flourish. Sometimes, freedom is a soft chair in a sunlit room, a good book and no one asking what time dinner is, a life you don't need to escape from. It's saying no without guilt. It's saying yes to yourself. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, expecting to hear Ethan's voice in the next room, expecting a fight that never comes. But the room is quiet. Oscar is curled by my feet, and I remember I'm not there anymore. I'm here. Last week, I gave a speech at a fundraiser for the foundation. Small crowd. Warm room, mostly women, mostly survivors, some just beginning their journey. I stood at the mic, hands trembling, heart full, and I said, for a long time, I thought freedom came from money. But what I've learned is that freedom comes from recognizing your worth, even when no one else does, from walking away before you get permission, from choosing yourself every damn day, and from knowing that love shouldn't hurt more than it heals. When I looked up, the room was silent. Then applause, but not the loud kind. The slow, steady, knowing kind. The kind that said, "We see you." I ended that night on the balcony of my apartment, looking out over the city. The lights below blinked like fireflies. The air smelled like clean linen and jasmine. I held a mug of chamomile tea, wrapped in a sweater I bought in W14 Florence. I thought about how far I'd come, about the girl who once stood in the kitchen, clutching a spoon so tight her knuckles turned white, about the woman I'd become, not hardened, just whole. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, I won't waste it, not the second chance, not the gift, not the lesson, and especially not myself. For the first time, I was not waiting for anyone, not hoping for approval, not seeking revenge, not bracing for pain. I was living, freely, fully, fiercely, finally. And just like that, the girl who was once called a burden has become a light for others. She doesn't need revenge through blades or bitterness through words, only to live a life that the man who once abandoned her no longer has the right to even touch. There are pains that never truly disappear, but they quietly make room for something better, peace, and some people aren't punished by a verdict, but by the very life that collapses behind them. As for Maya, she stepped out from the cracks of her life, carrying a heart that wasn't broken, only wiser. If you've ever been Maya or have known someone like her, tell me. Even a single line of comment can be the hand that pulls someone out of the dark.